I love how the characters in the Bible are anything but heroes. We think of them, we sometimes put them up on a high pedestal, but they are bumbling and messing up and objecting all over. The only hero in this story is God. He shows up to Moses in the burning bush last week, and now we're going to see for the next 2 weeks, Moses just objection after objection after objection. Here there's a really important moment where God tells us his name, and we're going to take some time with that. Exodus 3:11 through 22. But Moses said to God, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and to bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God said, "I will be with you, and this will show you that I'm the one who sent you. After you bring the people out of Egypt, you will come back here and worship God on this mountain." But Moses said to God, "If I now come to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your ancestors has sent me to you,' they're going to ask me, 'What's this God's name?' What am I supposed to say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am who I am. So say to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God continued, "Say to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, Abraham's God, Isaac's God, Jacob's God, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is how all generations will remember me. Go and get Israel's elders together and say to them, 'The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me. The Lord said, I've been paying close attention to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt. I've decided to take you away from the harassment in Egypt, to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, a land full of milk and honey. They will accept what you say to them. Then you and Israel's elders will go to the Egypt's king and say to him, 'The Lord, the Hebrews' God, has met with us. So now let us go on a 3-day journey into the desert so that we may offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. However, I know that Egypt's king won't let you go unless he's forced to do it. So I'll use my strength and hit Egypt with dramatic displays of my power. After that, he'll let you go. I'll make it so that when you leave Egypt, the Egyptians will be kind to you, and you won't go away empty-handed. Every woman will ask her neighbor along with the immigrant in her household for their silver and their gold jewelry as well as their clothing. Then you will put it on your sons and your daughters, and so you will rob the Egyptians." So God is calling Moses, and this begins the sequence of Moses objecting many times over. He doesn't want to be the guy, but God has chosen his man, and so we're seeing some of that here. Interesting quick note that the way that this whole sequence is described by God here, and there's a couple other allusions to it, is of a battle. Interesting how God chooses to describe this oppressed group of weak slaves as with kind of military language. It's really a fight against the powers of Egypt, against the powers of God. And God says, I'm going to bring justice against the powers of Egypt, and you won't go away empty-handed. This word here is the word for like plunder. There's this image here of Israel is going to leave not as a bunch of weak slaves, but as a military force because of what God is about to do. There is a lot here about God himself. I kind of want to focus in on this section here for a little bit. This is the famous name of God. Everywhere we see this sequence, the Lord, all in capital in the Hebrew Bible, it's the word Yahweh, which is the personal name of God that he tells Moses here. For me personally, when I'm reading through my Old Testament, whenever I come across this, I just replace it with Yahweh to remind myself this is the personal name of God, not some abstract God that we're dealing with. And what does that mean? It's a little untranslatable, but it's connected to this, the I am. Jesus uses this again in the New Testament. It's an important way that God describes himself. He is the God. He is the I am who I am, Yahweh. And so I've heard this described in kind of an abstract philosophical way as the God who is ever present. He is the God, and what he's telling Moses here is, I am the God who has no future or no past. Every moment of history is my present moment. So God is always looking, always watching, always present. He's not caught off guard as if there was a future he didn't know about. And he remembers because for him there is no past. And all that's great. But actually, reading this, especially in the context, makes me think of something a little deeper, more personal than that. Because what he actually says, he starts with, I am who I am. Yes, God is always present. That word Yahweh means something like the I am. Okay, we could stop there, but the text doesn't stop there. He says, tell this to the Israelites: the Lord, the God of your ancestors, Abraham's God, Isaac's God, and Jacob's God, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is my name forever. It's this whole sentence here that God is actually referring to. There's something, yes, it's the abstract philosophical God who is always present, but it's that God who bound himself to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. The God who says, Israel is my people. That is how I'm going to be known from here on out. And I think that's really profound, really important, and maybe a little controversial. God, the creator of the universe, binds himself to a people? What does that mean? That means that from here on out, as Israel falls, so does God. As Israel succeeds, so does God. God has to use Israel as his instrument from here on out. Actually, we saw that even earlier on with Abraham. God made a covenant with Abraham way back in Genesis 12. And here he's kind of re-instigating that for a whole people. He's about to make a covenant with the entire nation of Israel. Israel is God's instrument to bring healing and justice and peace to the world. He can't do it any other way. God has bound himself to Israel. And so from now on, forever, he will be known as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's God. We can't take this and turn it into some philosophy project and say God is just this abstract God, because we depersonalize God in that way. And actually the Hebrew Bible gives us a picture of God's character that links him to Israel's fate. And so we have to understand how God deals with Israel, because that's how God chooses to be known forever. So maybe, I don't know, that is interesting and intriguing for me, and really foundational for me in understanding why do we have the Hebrew Bible? Why do we have the entire Bible, both Old and New Testament? And how do we understand, as we're studying how God deals with this people group, we're getting a glimpse into God's character and really in God's own choosing. He could have done it any other way. He really is the creator of the universe, and yet he bound himself to a people. And now their fate is wrapped up in his character, in his reputation, in his name forever. Maybe think about that this week as we continue to walk forward, as God is choosing this people to be his instrument and binding himself to their fate. So we talked about this idea of God binding himself to a people, to Israel. God says, their fate is now my fate. And that's actually a great way to transition us into the gospel. Just for a quick second to think about, this is a precursor of the incarnation itself. The God who bound himself to Israel becomes human in the person of Jesus. We see that in the Gospels where Jesus became, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. God is taking this to its ultimate fruition in the Gospel, where Jesus becomes human. But here we see the precursor of that. God has bound himself to the fate of this nation. And how does this story, way back in Exodus, help us to understand the miracle of the incarnation itself? Maybe that would be one avenue to explore this week as you reflect on what does that mean for you in your relationship with our Creator.